All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the AIA Contract Documents webinar on understanding what's available. Let's go ahead and get started right away. We're just going to start by introducing ourselves here. So, my name is Sarah. I am a training specialist over here in the Contract Documents Department of the AIA. I'll be presenting for the next hour or so with my colleague Ben.
Hello.
So Ben works also at the AIA as a manager for contract documents information, and we're going to kind of be going back and forth again for the next hour or so. So we just want to get started by clarifying what we're doing here and what we're hoping to accomplish for the next hour or so. So the webinar is called Understanding What's Available. Now, that's a lot to cover. So we felt that the best way to actually convey that information to you is to actually classify AIA contract documents by type and family so that you can relate those classification aspects and those contract families to your own projects. And we'll kind of dive in a little bit to talk a little bit more about what that means. We're also going to show you how to access resources if you have more answers beyond what we cover today. And ultimately, our goal is to help you choose the best documents for your project. So as a note, we will be sending around the slides and recording of this presentation via email following this webinar. So you'll have that as a reference. You can expect that probably next week. I've also put a PDF version of our desk reference, which is a trifold document that lists our available documents as a handout in GoToWebinar. So you can find that in the handout section, and that's just a PDF document that you may find helpful for reference either during the presentation or following the presentation. So take a look at that if you can. So I know we have a range in the audience in terms of experience with AIA contract documents. So we're just going to start with square one by explaining what exactly is an AIA contract document. So AIA contract documents refers to the body of approximately 200 forms and contracts that, as we put it, defines the relationships and terms involved in our design and construction projects. So these documents are created, drafted, and revised by our Contract Documents Committee, and that comprises of 35 members that are experts in design and construction, law, and insurance. And each document goes through an iterative process of actually collecting and analyzing industry input to find what to actually put in these documents, and they're then drafted and revised and eventually released for you to purchase and use for your own projects. So when you go to actually purchase one of these documents, you're going to have one of three options. You can purchase a basic single document that gives you access to one template. You enter your project details, and you don't have any editing capability, so you can't make any additions or deletions for the legal language that's in the contracts. However, you can also purchase a customizable single document in which you can edit the legal language, and you can finalize that draft once, so you have one final document. Or you can purchase an unlimited one-year access in which you have unlimited access to edit as many documents as you'd like and also finalize as many documents as you'd like. So if you haven't already, take a look at aiacontracts.org/purchase and look at these options and find which one might be best for you and or your company. So now that we've gotten some context about where these documents came from and how you can get your hands on them, we're now going to dive into what documents are actually available to you. So when you're at aiacontracts.org and you go to the Documents tab up here, you're going to get to a list that has a library of all of our current available documents that are available to you to purchase. And you're going to notice that we have 4 headers up here. Now, some of these fields, so you have the number field here, the title of the document, the type, and the family. Now, some of these fields may be self-explanatory. So for example, the title, you may be able to look at that title, read through it, and get a pretty accurate assumption of what's in that document. For other fields, that may not be the case. So for example, what the heck are these numbers? Where do they come from? And what does a family mean in this context? So that's the kinds of things that we're going to be covering today and kind of explain to you to get some context for these documents. And we're going to start with the numbers over here on the left. So you may see these numbers as you're working with our documents, the A201, the G703, and many of you may just ignore them and focus more on the document title. And that's fine, but just know that each of these numbers actually represents an aspect of the document. So take a look here. Now it's important to note that you don't necessarily have to memorize what these numbers mean, what this breakdown is, but the context here can be really helpful just to get a better understanding of our body of documents. So let's break it down here. So one way that AIA contract documents are grouped are by series, and that's just this, and a series is distinguished by the use or purpose of the document, and they're represented by that first letter there. So you can take a look at our series here. The second is just your type of documents. You can see the breakdown here. Now the third letter here has to do with the delivery model of the project. You're going to see in a little bit that these align pretty closely with our document families that Ben is going to spend a good chunk of time here a little later on. So it's not important to look through these right now. We'll be revisiting this, but just keep in mind that delivery method is one aspect of document grouping. From there, you may have a sequence that'll increase if you have multiple documents with the same series type and delivery model. And then the year here is also going to be the addition. As I referenced earlier, these documents are often revised and they can be republished every 10 years or so if necessary. So you may see some updated additions. So that should give you some good context about where these numbers actually came from. So you may recognize them a little more now when you're scrolling through the documents that are available. Now I'm going to spend just a brief amount of time talking about the type column over here before Ben takes the bread and butter of the presentation, which is mainly going through these different document families. So there are three different types of contracts that are available for purchase. This is why we are called AIA Contract Documents and not AIA Contracts. So your contracts are the majority of documents we have to offer, but we also offer different forms that aid in contract administration and project management. So for example, your change orders, like our G701, your payment applications, G702 and G703. And we're going to see some more examples of those a little later on. We also offer exhibits, which go at the end of contracts. They're different from addendums because they are finalized ahead of time. One note on our exhibits is that some exhibits, so such as the Sustainable Project exhibit, in which you would attach to an agreement that is around a project that has specific requirements relating to sustainability, exhibits can be separate documents available for purchase in themselves. Other exhibits, such as the insurance exhibit, can be included in certain contract purchases, and you can decide whether or not to include them in your final contract, but they're not necessarily a separate document available for purchase. So this covers a lot of context around where these different groupings come from, what's available. We're now going to spend some time going through each of our families and going through how agreements in each family relate to each other. Now, this is a part of a presentation where we're going to get specific in the documents we have to offer. So as we go along here, try and keep your own projects in mind and keep in mind where they fit into these families and where they may or may not apply to you. And that's going to really help you use this information to actually find which specific documents you are going to want to use. And remember that we'll be taking questions at the end, so feel free to just type those in as we go along, and we'll see them on our end, and we can address those and maybe revisit some of these families and relationship diagrams in just a little. So with that, let's get started with our first and most popular family, which is the conventional design, bid, build family that's kind of centered around our A201 document. So this is where the owner's project is divided into one contract for the architect and a contract for the contractor, design versus construction. So now Ben's going to go through a diagram that depicts what agreements may be part of this family and how they actually relate to each other.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Okay, so this is, as Sarah mentioned, the conventional or design, bid, build family, sometimes called A201, because that is one of the first documents we ever published. We first published it back in 1911, and we last updated it in this family in 2017. I'll try to remember to tell you when the last version of each of these families was. In this case, it was 2017. Again, as Sarah mentioned, usually we update documents every 10 years, and when we do that, we have an 18-month transition period where the old ones are still available, and then we'll eventually phase them out, usually after 18 months, a year and a half. So in this case, the 2017 was the most recent versions. Prior version was from 2007, and of course, those are now retired. So again, to start with A201, that's the general conditions. So you can see that listed here as well. It's kind of like a big circle or umbrella over the whole project. That's what the general conditions are. And then, of course, you have these different relationships you can see with the bright and dotted lines, and you can see the various specific documents in there as far as how that's broken down. So as you can see, the owner hires an architect. That's going to do the design. The architect can hire consultants, and the consultants can be anybody, including another architect. And that's on the design end, on the left side of the page here. Owner, architect, and then architect, consultant. And the owner can have direct consultants as well. But then you have owner-contractor agreement. So this is obviously for construction. And then the contractor can hire subcontractors. If there's a surety company involved, we do have some bond forms for that, like a bid bond and a performance bond and payment bond. So we do have some forms for that as well. So that's how this is set up. These two with the little asterisks, A104 and B104, these are a little different because they do not refer to this. They are a little bit briefer. So A104 and B104 are just used by themselves, and the general conditions are, you don't use A201, the general conditions are here in A104. So in a lot of cases, the general conditions is a separate document, like A201. In some cases, though, the general conditions will be in an agreement, and that's what this is. A104 is an owner-contractor agreement, but in this case, it's also a general conditions document as well. The point of that is to create a shorter document for projects that maybe aren't as big. These others that you see listed here, A101, A102, A103, and B101, B103, these are longer. So if you have a big project, then you might want to consider that. Now, what's big? Well, that's subjective. So we don't have a specific dollar amount or a period of time or anything like that. But I will tell you, A201 is almost 40 pages long. So if that sounds like it's a good idea and you've got a big project and that sounds great, then go for it. If that sounds like overkill, then maybe you might want to consider something like A104 and B104, because those are a little bit shorter. You might call them medium if this is on the larger end. Which brings us to the next family. What if I have a really small project? When it's not large and it's not even medium. Let's say it's really, really small. Well, that's what the small project family is for. Two documents, B105, A105. The general conditions are right here in A105, just like the medium. And that is pretty much it. Small project, relatively short documents, relatively simple, just two of them, that's it. Now, and for some of these other families, this is the next one is CMA, Construction Manager Advisor. So this is going to have the owner hiring a third party, a construction manager advisor, who is not the architect, not the contractor, and they're going to provide advice on this project. So you see how we have the same owner-architect agreement relationship, different document, of course, but you also have owner-contractor agreement. So the owner can hire a contractor or multiple contractors, and so you have different agreements here: owner-architect, owner-contractor, and the owner can also have a consultant. But the big difference is this relationship right here, where the owner hires a CMA, a construction manager advisor. So this person is to provide oversight and advice during the process. So this is somebody who is not the architect and not the contractor. And we again have the general conditions, A232. There aren't options in this case. It's just, you only see one for each of these. So there's not as much as you would see in the conventional family. It's just, and these documents are fairly long. You can see the general conditions is A232. So that's similar to A201, but it's specific to this family. So again, very similar to conventional family setup, except for that there's a separate party, the CMA. The next family is CMC, and that stands for Construction Manager as Constructor, basically where the contractor is the construction manager. So that is, so you can see we have an owner-architect agreement. You can have an owner-consultant agreement, and then you have an owner-contractor agreement, but the contractor is the CMC, the construction manager contractor. So this is very similar to the conventional family, and in fact, it uses the same general conditions, A201. So what's the difference? Well, the CMC is involved at an earlier point than a, quote, contractor would be. So the contractor is the CMC, the construction manager contractor, so they do pre-construction and construction, both. So in a conventional family, the owner and the architect would get together and design. The architect would do the design, and maybe they don't have a contractor yet, and then they bid it out, and then they get a contractor. In this family, the contractor is a construction manager also, so they're involved during this process at this time. So you have this agreement, but while this is going on, typically you don't bid out a project like this because the contractor is already going to be on the project during this design phase, during pre-construction. And so then you have an agreement for construction, and then of course, subcontractor, consultants, all the other normal stuff. Again, this does use the A201 general conditions. So this was last updated actually just at the end of last year, 2019. So that is the version. Let me go back here. So conventional and small projects, 2017. CMA and CMC, 2019. So those were just updated very, very recently. So the 2009 versions of CMA and CMC are actually still available, but they will be phased out eventually. So keep that in mind. You can use the brand new 2019 versions now. And the 2019 versions of these agreements, like you see here, refer to the current 2017 version of the general conditions, which is A201. Next is design build. So this is where the owner is entering into a contract, just one, with the design builder who is going to do the design and the build. So you can see that in the other families, you have multiple agreements: owner-architect, owner-contractor. In design build, the owner basically just has one agreement with the design builder. Yes, they can hire a consultant, and we have that agreement here, but the owner really just has one main agreement with the design builder. And in this case, it's A141. But the design builder then hires whoever they need to hire. They can hire an architect, they can hire a contractor. So the design builder could be anybody. The design builder could be an architect, design builder could be a contractor, whoever they are. And so this family was last updated in 2014, by the way, and so we'll update it again in 2024 in about 4 years. So again, the design builder, if the design builder is an architect, let's say, then they can hire a contractor under A142 here. And then the contractor can hire subs. If the design builder happens to be a contractor, then they can hire the architect under B143. So that's how this is set up. Again, design builder could be anybody, could be an architect, contractor, even somebody else. And so that's how this is set up. It's basically just one entity for the owner to say to that entity, okay, go and do everything. And then the design builder does that, and they hire out whoever they need to hire. The general conditions in this case are within the various agreements. So like A141, B143, that's what the general conditions are in this case. And next we have program management. This is where the owner is involving basically additional consultants, what we refer to as a program manager and sometimes a design manager. So this is to develop a program. It's kind of similar to the CMA family. If you look at, you have owner architect, owner contractor, and then somebody else. In this case, we call it a program manager to develop a program. So that's this particular agreement. But you can see the owner contractor and owner architect relationships are functionally very similar and the same general conditions as well. So this is for a single project, and then you can see that we have for multiple projects. So very similar, just some slightly different agreements in each case, but this is if you had multiple projects, more than one, the owner could hire a design manager under this agreement, and then that design manager could be an architect, but you might have an architect of record. So that's what this agreement is between the architect of record. So again, these are very similar, single, multiple. Basically, it's when the owner wants to hire somebody else, like a program manager, and sometimes a design manager for multiple projects. So that's what these documents are in this family. And we do have a family called construction administration and project management forms. And so these are mostly these are not necessarily agreements, these are forms. So you can see these different types. I'll just briefly I'll give you a few examples. So payment applications and certificates like G702, G703, that would be for a contractor requesting payment. Change orders like G701. Qualification statements, we have two, A305 and B305. A305 is a contractor's qualification statement, B305 is an architect's qualification statement. Those are the only two there. We have some CCDs, a construction change directive, and an RFI, request for information. Those are pretty self-explanatory. I did mention the bond forms, A310 and A312. A310 is a bid bond. A312 is actually two bonds. It's a performance bond and also a payment bond. So we have those documents as well. In addition, there are certain documents besides the ones I mentioned that are specific to each family. So I mentioned G702 and G703. That's the conventional version. And then we have G732 and G733. Those are for construction management. So we have different versions of the pay apps. Same thing with the change orders. Not for all of them. Qualification statements, there's only one. But anyway, but for a lot of these, we have different versions for different families as well. And then we do have some other families we can just briefly mention here. IPD is Integrated Project Delivery. And so that is a more collaborative approach. And the intention is to get to a point where instead of having, like we showed you with the breakdowns, different parties with different bright line agreements, is to have basically a big circle where everybody enters into a multi-party agreement. That's one of the documents in this family where everybody joins together. Instead of owner architect, owner contractor, you can have everybody under the same umbrella. That's IPD. That's the function of IPD. We also have interiors, obviously for interior work, very much like the conventional family, but it's specific to interior jobs. So different things like FF&E, furniture, furnishings, and equipment. And we also have some purchase orders and other things in that family. And of course, international, just a couple documents there. And again, very much like the conventional family, except for instead of using the term owner, it uses the term client. Instead of using the term architect, it uses the term consultant. So that's the international family. And then finally, there's the digital practice family. So that is for specifically documents dealing with the exchange of digital information. And they can be used with any family. Some of them are specific to certain families, but any sort of digital data, including BIM, building information modeling.
Okay, so that's a perfect segue. Thank you, Ben. Just going to go back here once. That's a perfect segue into, if you see digital practice here, we recently had digital practice documents released, and we also have a few upcoming webinars related to digital practice. So if you're interested in learning a little more about that, we're going to go ahead and visit our Learn page here. So we can just see where you can find more resources that are available to you if you have more questions beyond what we've covered today. So I'm on the Contract Documents homepage, AIAcontract.org. Just quickly touching on a few different places I referenced on earlier. You have your Documents tab. That has your list of current documents. You can filter through here. You see the different families we talked about, who's involved. You see your different document types and document specialties. So we've covered these. Hopefully you can go in here with a little more confidence to look around and narrow down the list of documents you're choosing from. I also referenced the Purchase tab. You have your 3 different purchasing options that we talked about. So you can go down here and explore the different options. And then importantly, we have our Learn tab here. So this is where we have all of our different training and resources. This is a great place to go for more information. So if you go here and you filter by live training, you have our upcoming webinars. So I mentioned the digital practice. So we have an upcoming webinar. I believe this is next week on Thursday. That's key contracting issues in digital practice design and construction. And we also have a model sharing webinar coming up as well. Also, upcoming webinars, we have regular webinars on training in the online service. So if you've purchased either a customizable single document or an unlimited license, then you'll be using the online service to edit and finalize your documents. And we have regular trainings that you can sign up here so that you can learn to use that online software most efficiently. So I recommend coming and checking by the Learn page and live trainings. We have new webinars regularly, so those are updated and we have lots to show you. We also have some on-demand trainings and articles that you can access at any time. A lot of these are videos of past webinars that you can watch in your own time, and some very interesting articles. We have some great industry knowledge here. Earlier I mentioned our Contract Documents Committee. We often have them present their insights or write articles. So there's a lot of valuable resources from this Learn tab. So I definitely recommend taking a look there if you have the time. In terms of other places to find answers, so we just went through the Learn tab, but you also have our customer support teams. So AIA Contract Documents has 2 different support teams based on what answers you're looking for. So that first question is about the online service. You have our tech support team. This is when you're using the online service and you have any technical questions or any issues, you have a number you can call or an email that you can send along to. And then our second support team here is on AIA document content. We also refer to this as our docinfo line. A lot of your follow-up questions from today will go to this, so you can call email. A lot of the times you will actually get Ben to answer your questions. So if you want to bother him even more after this, you can give him a call. As you can probably already tell, he knows lots about the documents and he's always eager to share more. So both these teams are free to call, and I definitely encourage you to use them to find more resources. And with that, to find even more answers, we've tried to leave plenty of time for some Q&A here. So if you haven't already, go ahead and start sending your questions in. We're going to see them on our end, and I'll go ahead and read them out, and we'll have Ben answer. So we're just going to give a second to send some questions in here. We'll give you just a minute or two to send those in.
Before we get to that, I did actually want to mention something that I forgot. Sorry, I wanted to mention this at the beginning, but I went over the various families, but they're not necessarily divided by commercial versus residential. That's a fairly common misconception. And so obviously I went over the various families and how they're set up, but any of these could really be used for any type of project. Doesn't matter whether it's commercial or residential, public, private, or whatever. We do have the small project family for jobs that aren't that big, and so maybe a residential project isn't that big and might fit there, but maybe a residential project is big and would fit somewhere else. So I did want to mention that as well.
All right, so our first question is, if we purchase a document versus the unlimited usage, which is tied to one particular person, are the individual documents available for multiple users?
So with the unlimited license, you have unlimited access to all AI documents for 1 year, and you can share those documents. So the idea is you create a draft, and so the draft is an editable working draft. You can share that with anybody. There is the online service, so when you create a draft, you're creating it through the online service, and the draft is, in some cases, online, meaning it's on your browser, through a window in your browser. In some cases, it's offline, meaning it's a Microsoft Word file. So that is pretty straightforward. You just download the Word file, and you can send that to anybody. And then eventually you get to the point where you upload it and finalize it, and then, of course, that ends the process. But if you get an unlimited license, you can do that as much as you want.
All right, so our next question is, I am a small contractor that I do small projects, mostly apartment renovations. Which form is the best for that if you're dealing directly with the client?
So probably the small projects family, which when I went over just the two documents, A105 and B105. The only other thing I would say is it might go into the conventional family because that's, again, the most traditional. But again, they're not. It's not commercial versus residential. It's really how you're setting it up. In most cases, you probably would be in either the small projects family or possibly the conventional family. If it was a little bit bigger, you could use the small if it was small, and if it was medium, I mentioned the A104 and B104. So if you're a contractor, you'd be looking at A105 for the small owner contractor agreement and A104 for the medium. And then, of course, there's large, but I doubt you want to get into that. So probably those two documents, A105 or A104, would be probably, in most cases, the most appropriate.
So our next question is, can our lawyer customize or edit the AIA document?
Yes. So the whole point of the online service is to create that draft, editable working draft, which, again, for an agreement, like A104 or A105, for example, is going to be a Microsoft Word file. You can send that to your attorney, and they can edit it. All they need is Microsoft Word. So you can go back and forth with that as much as you want. You can edit it as much as you want. It does use Microsoft Word's track changes feature, so it has strike-throughs and underlines. So any change that your attorney or anybody made are going to show, and that will convey into the final. But you are allowed to make any changes you want. And we do recommend getting an attorney, so it's good that you have that.
Thanks, Ben. All right, our next question is, do you have a contract for a contractor that does both design and construction oversight?
Design and construction oversight. Well, that could fit in design build. Can you go to the design build family?
Sure.
I'm not exactly sure what you mean by design oversight, but if the contractor is truly responsible for the design aspect and the construction aspect, then they could be a design builder. And so that would be, in this family, the design build family. And that way they could hire an architect if the contractor is not themselves an architect. they can hire an architect in this family. And so at that point, we would call the contractor the design builder. So if I'm understanding you correctly, that could be that situation. And this is different from the conventional family where the owner hires the architect separately, because in this family, you can see that the design builder is hiring the architect.
All right, thanks, Ben. Next is, do you offer contract document trainings or information sessions for architecture firms? So I can speak to that. It depends on what you would like training on. Again, I went through the Learn page. Another page that you might want to take a look at our home page is, if we go home here, scroll down a little to this contract tailored to your needs module here, and you click I'm an architect. That could be a good place to get started. That includes most commonly used documents amongst your fellow architects, some good insight that we thought you might find helpful. And then if you're looking for training on the online service, then you can certainly go to the Learn tab and sign up for any of these live trainings. These could all be helpful for architecture firms if you're using the online service. And then also you can sign up for any of our upcoming webinars. You'll receive email updates. I would just keep an eye on the trainings we have coming out. And then I would just encourage you to go to our on-demand trainings to take a look at what we've offered previously that you could find helpful as well. So our next question is, what are your thoughts on using the A101 in cost plus fee projects? Is this simply a language and contextual incompatibility issue?
Okay, can you go to the conventional family?
Sure. One second.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the conventional family. You mentioned A101. A101 is a stipulated sum agreement. So what that means is the project is done for a stipulated sum, a fixed fee. And of course that can change, because anything can change, obviously, in any type of project. But that's what that document is. Can I get the laser pointer?
Yeah, sure.
Is it on? Or, sorry. Sorry, give me a second here. So let me just point this out. So we can go over some details here. So A101 is a stipulated sum agreement. A102 and A103 are both cost plus. So if you're looking for cost plus, you wouldn't use A101. You'd use A102 or A103. So these are both cost plus. So that means that the basis of payment is the cost of the work plus a fee. And the only difference is that A102 has a GMP, a guaranteed maximum price, whereas A103 does not. So if you're asking about cost plus, then no, you wouldn't use A101 at all. You would use A102 or A103 because they're cost plus, and you would make your choice by deciding, well, do I have a GMP or not? By the way, A104, the medium one that's a little bit shorter, has all three of these options. So if you had a medium or mid-sized project, any of those would fit into A104. A104 actually has three options within it, and you choose one. But for a larger project that uses the A201 general conditions, you would use A101 for stipulated sum, A102 if it's cost plus with the GMP, and A103 if it's cost plus without a GMP.
All right, so our next question is, how do you finalize individual documents if you don't purchase the unlimited usage package? So this is an online service question. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to our website here. And we're going to go ahead and, one second. I'm going to go ahead and visit our help section here, in which we can get to, there is a section on finalizing documents. Now, this is assumed that you're referring to a customizable single document. The process is the same. If you've been working offline and you have your draft in Microsoft Word, then you can go, when you're in the online service, to the Projects tab, you can import your file, and then you'll have the option in the online service to finalize. Now, I do recommend if you're just getting started with the online service and you do intend to use it more often, signing up for that basics training in our Learn tab, where we go over creating drafts and then finalizing drafts and different ways that you can use the online service. Our next question here is, oh yeah.
Just real quick, if you bought a single document, keep in mind that you can only finalize once. So the customizable single document and the annual unlimited license work under the same exact system. It's the same exact process. The difference is, with the single document, it's just a single one-time document. So you can only finalize once. So you don't want to do this unless you're super duper ready.
Yes, that is a very good point and an important one. So our next question is, can we still use the AIA documents after our annual license is expired? If you're still looking to use the online service to edit and finalize documents, you will have to renew your license, but you can still browse around. These are our home pages, so they're available to anyone, whether or not you've purchased, and you can still browse and access these samples online if you still just want to look around. That information is still very available to you, but again, if you want to use the online service to actually finalize and edit documents, then yes, you will have to renew your license. So our next question is from a college student studying construction management, and what potential career paths are in the future that focus on AIA contracts. So that's going to be up to you, of course. As I mentioned, in our documents committee, we do have many architects who are trained in architecture, but also manage a lot of their own. If some of them are firm owners, they manage their different legal documents. AIA contract documents are related to all construction projects, of course. So how you want to use them in your future career path is up to you. But if you're training as an architect, then they'll probably show up no matter what.
They are on the ARE, the architectural exam. The AI documents are on the ARE, and I believe they might be in other professional organizations' exams as well. I don't know the details, but the samples are free. So you can obviously look up a sample if you're studying for a test, for example. You probably want to look up A201, just as one example off the top of my head, and it's true that the ARE, and I'm sure some others do as well.
All right, I'm just going to give a few more seconds for a few more people to send in some more questions. So stand by for that. All right, so our next question that's in is, what is the difference, or can you speak more on the difference between contracts and forms?
So a contract is typically an agreement, and a form is typically like a 1 or 2 page form that does something on a job. So an agreement obviously is going to be a multi-page agreement between 2 parties, sometimes more, but usually 2. And so A101, A102, A103, those are all agreements or contracts. G701, change order, G702, the pay app, those are considered forms. And so generally agreements or contracts are offline. That's the Microsoft Word file that we talked about. So you edit them offline in Microsoft Word, you upload them, and you finalize them. That's the life cycle. A form is a little bit different because it's going through a similar life cycle of creating a draft, editing a draft, and finalizing, except for the difference is you edit it online. So you're in an online editor in your browser, and I did mention that before. But it has the online form editor has some features like importing and calculations. So if it's a form like a payment application, for example, or a change order, then it has the ability to import from previous pay apps or previous change orders, and it also does the math for you. So it does that in the online editor. So again, you're creating a draft and editing it, and you're just editing it online, and then you finalize it. So that's the life cycle of a form, and a contract is just that extra step of downloading, working in Microsoft Word, and then uploading.
Thanks, Ben. And this is a good segue. I can go into a little bit more detail about the training that we offer and actually using the online service. So now that you've gotten kind of a content overview, you may be ready to purchase and start using that. A good place to start is our online service basics training. This is a 1-hour training in which most of the time it's me. I'll take you through how to actually use the online service. And then from there, you can sign up for a follow-up training. These are offered monthly based on how you plan to use the online service. So Ben was just talking about forms like change orders and payment applications. If you are planning to complete these in the online service, we do have a training that you can sign up for, in which will actually walk you through how to complete these forms. We also have a basics part 2 if you're editing a lot of documents in the online service, and you want to get into a little bit more detail than what's in the basics training. You can sign up for a follow-up that gets into a little bit more of the nuances and features of the online service. And then finally, if you're an administrator on a multi-user account, you can sign up for a training that takes you through all the different capabilities you have as an administrator in the online service. And again, that is on our Learn tab. So our next question here is more of a high-level question. Can you give an overview of why AIA Contract Documents versus other sources? Do most design firms use AIA, and owners and contractors prefer others ever?
So the AIA has been publishing documents since 1888. So they are very well established and well respected within the industry. They are considered to be the industry standard. And so, of course, we're going to say our documents are great, but that is a little statistic for you, that they are over 130 years old. We do regularly update them, like I said, usually every 10 years, but we work with a lot of different outside groups, outside legal and insurance counsel. Our committee is composed of volunteer architects from around the country, and we work with all sorts of groups in the design and construction industry to create these documents. So we think that they really do allocate risk and responsibilities in a fair manner, and that they've been doing that for well over a century. So we feel very strongly that we have a good product. We have had and will continue to have a very good product in the future.
Thanks, Ben. Well said.
Thank you.
So our next question is, when you edit a document offline, can you save your edits and bring it up later to finish and finalize? Yes, you absolutely can. So when you're in the online service and you're working on a draft offline, you can upload to finalize at any point. So you're welcome to make your edits, save it to your desktop, and then anytime throughout the future, keep reopening it, making any edits. You really only have to re-import that document once you're ready to finalize. So you're welcome to hold on to that for longer. Our next question is, if multiple officers sign the AIA forms, do we have to purchase multiple licenses, or can we purchase one for the company? So if you're only talking about one form, then you really only have to have one license to create that form. In terms of multiple people signing, that's just a matter of either you can send it around for review. If you're talking about a form, the online service does have a feature in which you can share it to other parties to review. And those parties don't necessarily have to have an online service login to review the form. And you'll also have signing blocks that will be inserted when you finalize a document, and then you can distribute for signing. You don't necessarily have to have an online service login to sign a document. You just have to have one to create and finalize a document. So again, I'm just going to give another minute or so for a few more questions to filter in, and then we'll tackle those as well. Okay, so we got a follow-up on the question about multiple officers signing the AIA forms, referring to the D401.
So it's called the Certificate of Document Authenticity. It's just simply a single page at the end of a final document, and it's produced for most but not all AIA documents. It's basically just saying that this is the person who is signing it. So it's just like one paragraph, really, I, comma, and then a blank. And so you can put a person's name in that blank. The intention is that it would just be a person's name, usually a project manager or a principal. If you wanted to put multiple people, I suppose there's no reason you couldn't type whatever you wanted in that field, although obviously we cannot give any sort of business or legal advice.
Yeah, that's just called the name of the signing authority. And again, I'm going to just revisit this page on help on finalizing a draft. Your certification signing authority you have right there. And that kind of gives a little excerpt on whose name usually signs up as that designated signing authority. So if you want to refer to that for a little more reading, you can do that as well. So our next question is can I access the AIA docs on my Apple iPad to edit the document and then send it to my Office PC to complete it? So when you're editing offline in Microsoft, or if you're editing offline, that's in Microsoft Word. I believe it depends on how you're editing it in your iPad, and then if you're sending it to your Office PC, that should be fine. You can, once you have those drafts offline, you can send them around. You can send them via email. That is fine. And if you're editing online in the online editor, then you can access that as long as you can log into your AIA Contract Documents account. So it should be available there as well.
So yeah, online there's no issue at all. If it's a form or you're working online, you're just accessing it through your browser. So that's Internet Explorer, Chrome, Firefox, Safari if you're on a Mac. So that's totally fine. If you're offline, if you have Boot Camp or something like Windows for Mac, then there might be a way to do it and actually edit it in that way. If you just want to download the file and email it to somebody, I think that would work. Our tech support group can probably give you more detail on that, but I think that there are ways of making that work.
Yeah, and if you run into any issues, that technical support team that we have in the slides, I can also redisplay it here that we'll send around. They're a great reference for anything more specific that you're looking for in terms of that. So our next question here is, what is the difference between design manager and program manager? I'm going to display that program management relationship diagram here.
Right. So we do have those concepts, and I recognize that they do sound a little similar. Basically, a program manager is helping the owner in like an advisory capacity on matters that impact the entire program during design and construction. The design manager helps the owner and the program manager in developing and establishing the program. So they develop the program's design standards, and they would typically perform SD, schematic design, and DD, design development. So for each project. So the design manager concept is for multiple projects, as opposed to the single project. For multiple projects. So for a single project, you don't have the design manager. Exactly. Single project is just program manager. But for multiple projects, you'd have a design manager to develop that multiple project program. Hope that makes sense.
All right, I believe we have made it to the end of our question bank here. We'll give a last-minute call for any additional questions. Just give another minute or two to send those in, but otherwise I believe we've hit them all. All right, I'm not seeing any additional questions coming in, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. So I'll send you home again with a reminder that you will get these slides and a recording of the presentation today via email, so you'll have it for reference. Thank you very much for joining us. We are both very excited to be able to come and share this with you. We had some great questions. Also, remember to visit our Learn page for any additional trainings and resources. And we always have these two different support teams. So thank you very much and have a great rest of your day and have a wonderful weekend.